Dear church, let's talk about pornography addiction. Hello and welcome to the Dear Church podcast. I'm your host, Chris McCurley, joined by Chris Croats today, all the way from Cheyenne, Wyoming. Chris, thank you so much for being with us.
It's great being here.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about what's going on in Cheyenne. Tell us a little bit about your family and everything going on in your life. Just catch us up.
Oh, man. These are pretty exciting times in Wyoming right now. Not only is the snow melting, but the work here in the church is God is blessing us just tremendously. We are the church here in Cheyenne. We have about 200 members, and we're growing pretty rapidly, and that all of that just goes back to God. We've had, I think, 8 baptisms this year so far, which is a pretty significant increase. We couldn't be happier with the work going on here. My wife and I, my wife Alicia, we've been married for 17 years, and we have 4 kids together, and they are. My oldest actually turns 20 tomorrow, so happy birthday, Angelina. And then we have a 16-year-old, 14-year-old, and a 12-year-old. So,
So you're pretty busy, just with
we're
family.
Busy. Yeah, it's busy.
How long have you been at the church there in Cheyenne?
We're at 3.5 years. Yeah,
okay.
3.5 years since we moved here. We moved right before the pandemic happened. So it was a great time to start a new ministry, for sure.
No kidding. No kidding.
I don't recommend it at all.
Well, I appreciate you, Chris, joining us. And thank you so much for coming on to talk about this topic, because it's one that, we've approached in the past, but I don't think we can talk about it too much, because I feel like that a lot of times we look at certain problems as if they're contained in the world around us. And, the church is just kind of not prone to these kind of things. And nothing could be further from the truth. And certainly if you have an issue in the world, it's probably going to seep into the church. And pornography is one of those. It's not something that we, necessarily talk about as much. But I know you've made several trips to other churches and other places talking about this topic. And that's why I wanted to have you on. This pornography addiction is one of those that I think is affecting a lot of people in the church, and a lot of folks want to know, how do I deal with it? How can I overcome it? And so talk a little bit about just kind of how this problem has impacted the church and what you have seen.
Absolutely. The way that I describe it, Chris, is exactly how you put it, and how I think for a long time we viewed pornography as that. That's a worldly issue. That's something that's going on out there. And thank God that we are redeemed and made new, and so we don't have to worry about that. In probably the last 20 years for this particular issue, that has not been the case. The numbers are hard to come by, because, like you said, nobody really wants to talk about this. And so surveys that go out, people don't really want to engage with them. But in the numbers that I've been able to find from surveys that are they're not particular to the Church of Christ, just kind of Christendom as a whole, put it around 64 to 68% of Christian men view pornography at least once a month. Wow. In the realm of addiction, engaging in a particular addictive behavior once a month, the world might not bat an eye to that. But for those of us who are Christians, engaging in any type of sin, especially one of a sexual nature, especially if you're married, I would imagine that their spouses or their future spouses, that number would not be acceptable, right?
Right. Right.
Um, and the fact that that we know that it's wrong, and the fact that we can't stop it, then I think that points directly towards addictive behavior of knowing that
Yeah.
there are going to be negative consequences, not just here, in this life, but also consequences spiritually. And yet we continue to do it. That's addiction. And I
Absolutely.
think the scary thing, Chris, is that these numbers, and it's 68% of Christian men view it once a month. And then I think it's about 50% view it weekly, and about 30% view it daily. That's from the Christian standpoint. But those numbers almost mirror the national average.
Hmm.
And so what does that mean? It means that when it comes to this issue of pornography, for some reason, the fact that we are Christians, the fact that we believe in the Bible, and the fact that we worship with a congregation has no bearing on whether or not a man's going to click that mouse or scroll on your phone when it comes to this particular problem. And
Yeah.
I conducted my own personal survey, just kind of informally on Facebook a couple years ago, and my number was at 80%. The question that I asked my friends was, has pornography ever impacted you? And so that kind of covered both men and women,
Right.
of whether or not they've dealt with pornography within their marriage, or just men, or if they had a friend that they knew struggled. And it was 80% of my friends were impacted by pornography.
Yeah.
Besides that, just from a church leadership standpoint, the same survey that came out that had the 68% of Christian men, it said that 50% of ministers within the church said that pornography was a real temptation for
Wow.
them. And um, that, I mean, and it kind of goes to the, I don't know, maybe answer the question a little bit of,
Yeah.
why aren't people talking about this? I mean, it's an awkward thing to talk about. It's kind of messy, right? It's kind of dark.
Yeah.
Nobody really wants to touch it. But when you have half of your leaders in the church that are wrapped up in it, there's most likely not going to be a lot of talking going on, because they're coming from a standpoint of they don't know how to deal with it themselves.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I wanted to ask next. I mean, how did we get here? Why is this such a prevalent problem in the church? Why do you think anyway?
Um, I think I think there's probably multiple answers to this.
Yeah.
This I wish I could point to just one thing, and say, well, it was this TV show, or it was this, whatever. Absolutely, the invention of the internet has caused all sorts of challenges and
Hmm.
difficulties for us to overcome, just in our society today. But I think one big part of this, at least from the church's standpoint, is that we don't like to talk about it. Um,
Yeah.
and so the sin has kind of run rampant a little bit within our church, just kind of unchecked. Just, as long as it's, what do they say, out of sight, out of mind, right? Of like,
Yeah.
well, as long as I don't know about it, then, maybe I don't really have to worry so much about it. But I mean, we know how sin works, right? Like, you can pretend like it's not there. But what happens a lot of the time is that, we keep it in the dark, and sin, it festers, and it grows, and it it starts impacting all of these different areas of our life. And so no one really wants to talk about it. The church, I would say in large part, doesn't really know how to address it. You could, I think an average preacher, they could probably put together a sermon on pornography. That's not that big of an issue. But then it's kind of like, well, then what?
Yeah.
What happens if I do have, one of the members comes and talks to me, says that they feel convicted, which is a great thing. But then, how do I help them get better? And I guess that's one of the areas that I would hope to be able to help some churches out, try to figure out what's the next step. But besides that, the church really isn't doing its part of talking about this subject and bringing it up and addressing it within our church. But also in just our society today, I think we have two main problems, which I call the perfect storm for pornography addiction. And that is technology addiction paired with our impatient culture that we've kind of cultivated throughout the last 10 to 20 years. Mm-hmm. And I mean, if anyone has kids or teenagers, particularly, the technology addiction is very evident. I have 3 teenagers. My youngest is about to turn 13, and so we are in it right now. We are in it, and I would say most parents, if they want to punish their teenagers today, what do? They take away their phone, right? And why is that? Well, they realize that that's the one area that it really it hurts for them. Why? I'm like, well, why is that? It's because they're addicted to it. They have to be able to Snapchat their friends and get on TikTok and do all of these things. It is such an integral part of their lives. And not just teenagers, but I would say I've experienced this of you leave the house and I forgot my phone. Well, what do? It's like, well, I can't live without my phone, right? And so even if I'm all the way at work when I figure this out, well, I'm turning around and I got to go get my phone. That's just how life works these days. We can't live without our phones. And not only that, but there's a whole science going into social media apps and their addictive nature that I talk about in my seminar a lot, because I think it's shaping our culture, our society here in America. At least it's changing who we are as people, because we don't know it, but we are addicted to technology. And then you pair that with how impatient we've become, that I remember when Amazon came out with 2-day shipping, and it was just, whoa, I can have anything I want in 2 days. And now, before we moved to Wyoming, we were in Pennsylvania, and it was down to 1-day shipping. And or for certain things, it was same day. Like you could order it in the morning and it would be at your house that evening. And it was just like, so then now 2-day shipping becomes, 2 days.
I gotta wait 2 days.
I gotta wait 2 days? What? Whereas, when I was a kid, you ordered, anything from a catalog or the beginning stages of the internet, you're looking at weeks, right? Weeks and weeks before you get it. And so we're just very impatient today. And when you have a culture that has this mindset of, I can have anything I want at the click of a button, and this addictive dependence upon technology, that creates this perfect storm for pornography addiction. Because when you take that model to the sexual realm, right? It's all available to me, and it's all, for the most part, pornography access to pornography is free. And so that's a lot of temptation you're talking about. And especially when you're looking at young people, teenagers, people in their early 20s, people in college, that's a lot of temptation to say, no, actually, no, I'm not going to do that.
No, I agree with you. You add to the availability, it's readily available. You have this technology addiction, and then you even have the pornography pushers, if I can call them that, targeting,
Yeah.
even younger people, younger than what we would expect. I remember having a conversation with an elder many years ago talking about our youth group at the church I was at the time. And he was like, yeah, but our kids don't deal with that. Well, not only do they deal with it, they're dealing with it like at 10, 11 years of age.
Yeah.
I mean, way younger than we ever would have expected. It's mind blowing to see what is accessible and then what is being thrust upon our young people that are getting on these different apps and things of that nature. So, yeah, I mean, everywhere you turn, it's there and it's accessible. So let me ask you this, Chris. Here's where I struggle, because as a minister, there are some things that a sermon can't fix, right? I mean, we can talk about it. I'm not saying we shouldn't preach about this. And like you said, we have kind of maybe in many of our churches kind of skirted the issue, but there's some things a sermon can't fix. And as a minister, when you're talking about addiction, I do a lot of counseling, and I think I feel pretty confident in being able to help someone spiritually. But when you talk about addiction, you're talking about something that goes over my head. And so getting people to the right channels that, whether it be a counseling center like we have here at Walnut Street, or, a facility, whatever it may be, that's really where you have to kind of admit these kind of things are over your head. And so you've got to channel them to the right places. So let me ask you this, what can we do? We know it's a prevalent problem.
Yeah.
I know we can preach about it. We can talk about it, teach about it in our churches, but what ultimately can we do to get people the help they need?
And Chris, I agree with you. I think I have a master's degree in marriage, couple, and family counseling, primarily so I could work in this field and make sure that I knew what I was talking about in helping people with this. And I think that there are some problems, especially when we start getting into the realm of addiction, that the age-old advice of just read your Bible and pray about it. Mm-hmm. As much as those are good things, right? I'm a preacher, and so if you aren't reading your Bible and you aren't praying about your addiction, well, you need to start. Absolutely. But I think that there are some more specific things that a counselor might be able to help out with. But also, I think when you look at the problem of pornography, and the type of addiction that it is, I believe that the church is specifically or uniquely positioned to help in this problem. Mm-hmm. Because when you look at what the addiction actually is, a lot of it stems from abandonment, abuse, and shame, which are, those are big things. And a lot of different issues stem from those three roots that people, most of us, have to endure at some point in our lives. But the way in which I talk about pornography addiction is in the realm of an intimacy disorder, which what that means, in layman's terms, is that we don't like to have people see us for what we truly are. Porn addicts, and really a lot of addicts, we become masters of wearing the mask or playing the part, and no one really actually or allowing someone to actually see who we are. And that's what intimacy is, right? It's allowing people to see who you truly are. Well, in the church, the church that we read about in the New Testament, and what we are instructed to do and to be, and to how we're supposed to function as a church, the answer that I've been able to help coach people to involves things like community, intimacy, walking with each other, being accountable to each other. And when, you know, when we read about, well, how is a church supposed to address sin? It's, we need to expose it, right? We need to shine a light on it. But it also, we have this idea, this mindset within the church that it's not so much a like, well, we just need to condemn these people, and you need to figure your life out. It's walking with them. Yeah. It's bearing each other's burdens. It's confessing our sins to each other. And I mean, if we're actually doing that, a lot of the work that I do, we have a group that I run here at my church. I have one that I run via Zoom online. I had one running for a long time that was just preachers, preachers in the church that had really nowhere else that they could turn, because they felt like, well, if I tell my elders about this, I might get fired. If I confess this to my church, again, I might get fired, or I might lose some of my
your credibility,
interaction with the church or what have you. And so we had a group running for a long time, and by far, and I asked the guys that I work with to kind of write some, what they think about our overcome group and all of that. And by far, for myself included, it has been the most beneficial and has the most longevity for actual help, because a lot of guys, we try almost everything, almost anything, to get over this sin. And it's kind of, it's ironic, but maybe a little sad too. And that, like if we just did what we see in the Bible, things would get better. And that first step involves actually talking to people, actually talking to someone about what it is you're struggling with. And I think just as people, as human beings, we struggle with that, because that's scary. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of trust within someone else to tell them your deepest, darkest secret. But that confession, that accountability, that walking with each other, praying for each other, not being afraid to open up, has been, by far the most beneficial thing. And in the seminars that I offer, we have limited time here, but in my seminars, I walk churches through exactly how to do that. Like, how do you set up your group? How do you how does the group function? What are the questions you should be asking? And then offer them support as they get things going.
It's interesting you bring that up, Chris, because I have heard, I don't have the knowledge space that you have, but I have heard that one of the biggest factors in overcoming porn addiction is accountability. Having someone that you're accountable to, like, the Covenant Eyes program, which I'm sure you've seen, they base that on the accountability factor. The problem that I have found with some of those resources like Covenant Eyes is they can be cost prohibitive to some people. There is some would say, well, there is, no amount of money that, you shouldn't be willing to throw towards it if you want to overcome this. But it can be prohibitive if there is a cost involved. And I feel like that's kind of a hindrance sometimes with some of those programs that are really good. But the greatest social network that's ever been established is the church. Amen. And having this transparency and being able to confess your sins to one another. Obviously, there are some folks that maybe you don't trust to do that with, but find the people that you do, that you can trust, that you can open up to, because I think you just said it, but that has been proven to be one of the biggest, at least first steps in overcoming pornography addiction is the accountability factor. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely. And I would even go to say Covenant Eyes, there is it costs something per month, but there are also free resources that offer very similar things that Covenant Eyes does. But I mean, also, if this is something the church can get behind, if the church leadership knew that, or if they were behind getting a group started, and so much so that they would even say, you know what, if someone isn't able to pay for their Covenant Eyes, we're gonna make that a part of, we'll cover that bill.
Yes.
If they're really wanting to get better, and they're involved in this group, as long as they're involved in this group, we're going to pay for their Covenant Eyes because we want them to get better
Yeah.
through it. And I think that would be a fantastic thing for a church to get behind. But the thing about Covenant Eyes, and other accountability softwares as well, is that they are accountability tools to be used. They aren't accountability in and of themselves, because
good point.
a lot of the guys that I've talked to, and my own personal story, is kind of goes the realm of, all right, like we had this program, but no program's perfect, and when you have an addict who is trying to find their way to scratch their itch, or to do their addictive behavior, they're going to find a way around it.
Absolutely.
And you can't, I mean, like, there is no app that can track certain things. Like, I mean, pornography is so readily available in our world today that if you want it, you will find it. And in large part, it is untraceable, and that's where the group comes in, right? It's like that's where actual accountability comes in. Where even if you're able to beat the app, or you found a different way, still being able to confess that sin, still being able to talk to your accountability group of saying, hey, yeah, I beat the program this week, but that the act of confession and that continuing to be intimate within your group, that is the healing process at work. Of the more that they're intimate, the more that they keep confessing. I've seen it probably 100 times at this point, of people that they start out and their road is really rough and it's really bumpy, and they're thinking, well, how is this working? But you stay with it long enough, you keep confessing, you keep on being intimate with your group, and it just goes away. It just solves itself, because you start realizing, I mean, when you take that power away from the sin, that power of that we give it by not talking about it, the power that we give it by not confessing it and trying to and lying about it, then it loses a lot of its hold on a person when they realize, oh, like, I don't have to lie about this anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Like with any sin, you love the taste, but you hate the outcome. And until you hate the outcome more than you love the taste, you're never going to overcome it. And I think that's where the people that I've talked to that have been able to defeat this and to beat this addiction are folks that have said, I just eventually came to a point where it wore me down so much that I hated the outcome more than I loved the taste. And that hate was a great motivator for change. Is that what you've experienced when you see success stories and people that have beaten this? Is that really what you've noticed?
Yeah. Week by week, people, they lose their appetite for it when when they realize, oh, like I can do this, but I'm gonna confess it. I'm going to confess this later. And so bringing that sin out of the darkness and into the light, it takes care of a lot of the issue, or a lot of the temptation to look at porn, to act out to it.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, tell folks how they can get in touch with you and maybe have you come to their church and do a seminar, and give us all the particulars of that so that we can get that message out.
Absolutely. So in my seminar, I've offered them, it's really up to the church of what works best for them. I've done a 1 day, I've done a 2 day, I've done a 3 day seminar. And it just kind of depends on what kind of time and availability that they have. The seminars, I'm a preacher, so we're there to educate, expose, and encourage. Right. So we got to have the alliteration there. Just so it's official.
Right.
But it's really about just starting this conversation, bringing it up, letting the church and the community too. This is a great outreach tool for the community, of inviting them in, because guess what? All of those other churches in the community, they're not talking about it either. And what an outreach tool to show your community that for this issue, we want to be a lighthouse to sinners, to people who are struggling with this issue, that you might not be able to talk about this anywhere else, but you bring your sin here and it will be dealt with. And you will be supported and encouraged, and you will find help. And so my wife typically comes along with me. She is a tremendous asset to this, because with my own story of working through my own addiction, her part of the story is incredibly powerful and incredibly encouraging to a lot of the wives of addicts out there. And so I typically have her come with me, and she has like a separate little class and Q&A that she'll run after my part of the seminar. But the website that we have for Overcome is it's whenIamweak.org. WhenIamweak.org. My contact information is on there. It's Chris at whenIamweak.org. And you can reach out to me that way if you want to schedule a seminar. Even if you don't want to schedule a seminar, if you're someone who's watching this and you're struggling individually, and you're not quite sure what to do or where to start, reach out. That is the first big step to getting better, is just reach out, just talk to someone. And if I can be that someone to anyone that's struggling, I would love that. And so, yeah.
That's great. Hey, Chris, thank you so much for coming on today. This is very helpful information. And I hope that if anyone is watching or listening and struggling with pornography addiction, that they will reach out to you. You can also email me at chris.mccurley@rippleoflight.com, and we will try to help as best we can, or put you in touch with people that can help you to overcome. Chris, thanks again. I wish you well in your ministry and the church there in Cheyenne, and all the great work that you're doing with Overcome.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Thanks
Absolutely.
for letting me be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you all for tuning in. We appreciate you being listeners and viewers. And please share the news about the podcast. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook. Just appreciate you so much. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. Sincerely, Chris.